Hello, fellow bass players and musicians. Mike Dudko here. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about improv and learning how to improvise. I have a lot of students asking me, how do I get started doing that? And a lot of people have some misconceptions about it. They think it's all about learning chord scales and all this theory, but really it's just about learning a certain type of language. So I'm definitely not trying to say that theory is not important or you shouldn't learn it. You definitely should learn it. It'll always help you kind of decipher this stuff a little bit easier. So before you guys watch the rest of this video, I definitely recommend checking out the last video I made. I did a cover of Grant Green's guitar solo over a song called Spiffy Diffy, and I'm going to be using that as an example throughout this video. So as some of you guys know, I studied with the late great Jim Stinnett for about 5.5 years. And if you guys don't know about his YouTube channel, I'll put a link in the description. It's incredible. But he wrote a lot of great books too. I'll put the link in the description to buy this book too. He would have, pages and pages of music, obviously, but then he would also have little blurbs of text to kind of just help you along and give you some lessons. And there's this one passage from this book. It's called Jazz Bass Architecture and Language. And I read this passage to all of my students, so I'll read it to you guys right now. To the listener, good lines and good phrasing are all that matter. The music student or amateur professional can get hung up on this. They have been conditioned to think that all jazz has to be original and unique. It does not. There is a shared vocabulary and it does not get old or boring. Just like our spoken language, do we get tired of the same words we use every day? No, we don't, because it's the message that conveys our thoughts, not the elements. Our organization and fluency allow us to speak smoothly and deliver our message. It's not the lick or scale or chord that is important, it's the overall message of communication. When we first study a foreign language, we're not concerned with the diversity of words we learn. We are wanting to learn to communicate with basic phrases. Remember, music is also a form of communication. So in light of that information, the fact that music is just a form of communication, obviously we need to learn some of the language and then repeat it a whole bunch so that way it kind of becomes ingrained. So anyway, I spent a couple practice sessions a few weeks ago working out Grant Green's guitar solo to Spiffy Diffy. And after that, I worked on transposing it to a new key. The original recording is in the key of B flat and I transposed it into the key of F. Now, a lot of people, they are super confused about how to do that kind of thing, but really it's just a matter of taking it one note at a time. So the first lick of Spiffy Diffy goes like this. The first little phrase, it goes. That's the first little phrase. So if you're trying to transpose that to another key, just figure out, okay, what's my starting pitch? This is my starting pitch. I'm in the key B flat. It's B flat. Okay, so what would be the starting pitch if I were in F? It would obviously be F, right? So then just take it one note at a time and move it all down to the new key. So the first step would be just like, how in B flat it was. So now we're in F, it's, and then we go. A lot of people get really frustrated when they're doing this kind of thing. They're like, man, I worked on this for a whole hour and I only got a couple notes. That's totally normal and that's okay. It's okay if transposing it to a new key takes twice as long as it did to actually learn it to begin with. That's totally cool. It's not a race to learn how to do any of this stuff. So like I said, I spent a few practice sessions learning how to play this solo, and then I spent about 2 weeks just repeating it over and over and over along to the recording. That way it became ingrained. I wanted this song to be as familiar to me as a song I've known for years. That's when you really are able to start using the language. Once I had it down in the key of F, after, quite a few hours of trying to figure it out, I started practicing it over a 12-bar blues just to start kind of putting it into a context, if that makes sense. What I did after I could play Spiffy Diffy in a 12-bar blues, I learned one of the 12-bar blues solos out of this book. initially I had Spiffy Diffy in like a 12-bar blues setting, and then I had an actual, 12-bar blues solo. And then after practicing a whole bunch, I started kind of mixing licks. I would take a lick from one of the solos out of the book, and then I would take a lick from Spiffy Diffy, and then this is what it sounded like. So imagine if, this is just from 2 different solos. Imagine if you learned 20 solos or 100 solos and, you'd been playing these licks for years. Eventually you would start to change some of the licks and they would become, kind of your own licks. A lot of people are like, well, how am I going to develop a voice if all I do is copy other players? That's the way that you do it. You just take a ton of different information from all these players, and that takes a long time. It takes years to do that. But once you've taken tons and tons of licks and vocab from all these different players, it starts to help you form your own voice. And then you start to make up your own licks, you start to play licks from other people, but with your own kind of phrasing. And you really become your own player through doing that. So I hope this video helped you guys a little bit start the process of learning how to improvise. But, like I said a little while ago, it takes years. It takes a really long time. But that's okay, because it is not a race. We're all on this journey together trying to figure it out. So basically, just take it one note at a time. And pretty soon, after you learn like the first maybe 2-3 solos, you're going to be able to do this stuff as long as you spend the right amount of time on it. If any of you guys are interested in taking private bass lessons with me, the link to my website is in the description, but you can also email me. My email is in the description as well. I'd love to work with some of you guys on this stuff.